Next, phenols are a class of aromatic compounds that are synthesized from phenylalanine or tyrosine. They are involved in plant defenses against pathogens and herbivores, as well as in UV protection and regulation of growth and development. Examples of phenols include flavonoids, which are responsible for the coloration of flowers and fruits, and tannins, which are found in many woody plants and are involved in defense against herbivores. Then nitrogenous compounds such as alkaloids are synthesized from amino acids and play important roles in plant defenses against herbivores and pathogens. Some alkaloids are toxic to animals and are used by plants as a chemical defense mechanism. Examples of alkaloids include caffeine, nicotine, and morphine. The biosynthesis of the secondary metabolites is regulated by a complex network of enzymes and pathways, which are often induced in response to environmental stresses or other signals. Understanding the biosynthesis and function of secondary metabolites in plants is important for developing new medicines, agricultural products, and other applications. Next, stress physiology. Stress physiology are response of plants to biotic nitrogen and insects, abiotic water. Plants are constantly exposed to a variety of abiotic and abiotic stresses which can negatively impact their growth and survival. Stress physiology refers to the study of how plants respond and adapt to these stresses. Biotic stresses such as pathogen and insect attacks can trigger a variety of defensive mechanisms in plants. These include physical barriers like thickened cell walls, chemical defenses such as production of secondary metabolites like alkaloids, terpenes, and phenolic compounds, and the activation of signaling pathways that lead to the expression of defense-related genes. Examples of these responses include the hypersensitive response, in which infected cells undergo programmed cell death to limit the spread of infection, and systemic acquired resistance, in which a plant's systemic response to infection is enhanced. Abiotic stresses such as water deficit, high temperature, and salinity can also trigger various responses in plants. In response to water deficit, plants can undergo stomatoclosure to reduce water loss, produce osmoprotectants to maintain cellular turgor, and alter their metabolism to reduce water demand. High temperatures can induce heat shock proteins and antioxidants to protect against oxidative damage. Salinity stress can cause iron toxicity and water stress, leading to the activation of signaling pathways that regulate iron homeostasis and the production of compatible solutes. The ability of plants to adapt and respond to biotic and abiotic stress is essential for their survival in their natural environment. Understanding the mechanisms behind these responses can lead to the development of new crop varieties with increased resistance to stress, as well as the development of suitable agricultural practices that can minimize the impact of the stress on crop yield. Next topic, system physiology, animal blood and circulation related topics. So, blood and circulation in animals involve a complex set of processes and functions that are essential for the survival and well-being of organisms. So, blood corpuscles, these are the cells that make up the blood, including red blood cells, erythrocytes, white blood cells, leukocytes, and platelets, thrombocytes. Hemopoiesis and formed elements. Hemopoiesis is the process by which blood cells are produced in the body. Formed elements include red and white blood cells and platelets. Then plasma is the liquid component of blood, and it contains various substances such as electrolytes, proteins, and hormones that play important roles in maintaining the health and function of the body. Blood volume and regulation. Blood volume refers to the total amount of blood in the body, and it is regulated by various mechanisms such as the renin, angiotensin, aldosterone system, the release of antidiuretic hormone, and the action of the kidneys. Then blood groups. Blood groups are based on the presence or absence of specific antigens on the surface of red blood cells. The most well-known blood group systems are ABO and RH. Next, hemoglobin. Hemoglobin is a protein found in red blood cells that is responsible for carrying oxygen from the lungs to the tissues of the body. Then immunity. The immune system is responsible for protecting the body against foreign substances such as bacteria and viruses. White blood cells play a critical role in this process. Hemostasis. Hemostasis is the process by which the body stops bleeding after an injury. Platelets and clotting factors play important roles in this process. Understanding these topics is important for studying animal physiology, and it's very essential for maintaining homeostasis and understanding various disease conditions. Next, cardiovascular system. The cardiovascular system is responsible for the circulation of blood and is composed of the heart, blood vessels, and blood. The heart is the center of the cardiovascular system and is responsible for pumping blood throughout the body. Here are some of the major concepts related to the cardiovascular system. Comparative anatomy of heart structure. The heart is a muscular organ that is responsible for pumping blood throughout the body. The anatomy of the heart varies depending on the species. In general, the heart is composed of 4 chambers, 2 atria and 2 ventricles. The right atrium receives deoxygenated blood from the body and pumps it into the right ventricle. The right ventricle then pumps the deoxygenated blood to the lungs where it is oxygenated. The left atrium receives oxygenated blood from the lungs and pumps it into the left ventricle. The left ventricle then pumps the oxygenated blood to the rest of the body. Myogenic heart. The heart is myogenic, meaning that it has its own electrical system that controls its contraction. The electrical signal that triggers the contraction of the heart originates in the sinoatrial node, which is located in the right atrium. Then specialized tissue. The heart contains specialized tissue that is responsible for conducting the electrical signal from the sinoatrial node throughout the heart. This tissue is known as the atrioventricular node and bundle of His. ECG, its principle and significance. An electrocardiogram is a recording of electrical activity of the heart. The ECG is used to diagnose a variety of heart conditions such as arrhythmias, heart attacks, and heart failure. The principle behind the ECG is that the electrical activity of the heart generates a small electrical current that can be detected on the surface of the body. Next, cardiac cycle. The cardiac cycle refers to the sequence of events that occurs through one heartbeat. During the cardiac cycle, the heart goes through 2 phases, diastole and systole. During diastole, the heart is relaxed and the chambers filled with blood. During systole, the heart contracts and pumps blood out of the chambers. So, systole is the relaxed condition. No, diastole is the relaxed condition, but at that time the chambers are filled with blood. But the next condition is systole, and during that time the heart contracts. So, that will eventually pumps out the blood into the other chambers. Then heart as a pump. The heart is responsible for pumping blood throughout the body. The force that the heart generates when it contracts is called blood pressure. Blood pressure is highest in arteries and decreases as the blood flows through the capillaries and veins. Neutral and chemical regulation of all above. The cardiovascular system is regulated by both neural and chemical factors. The nerve system plays a role in regulating the heart rate and blood pressure. Chemical factors such as hormones and electrolytes also play a role in regulating the cardiovascular system. Next, respiratory system. The respiratory system in animals is responsible for the exchange of gases between the external environment and the internal body tissues. This exchange is necessary for the uptake of oxygen and by the blood tissues and the removal of carbon dioxide from them. The respiratory system varies across species and is shaped by their ecological and evolutionary adaptations. In this section, we will discuss the comparative anatomy of the respiratory system, the transport and exchange of gases, waste elimination, and the neural and chemical regulation of respiration. So, comparative anatomy of the respiratory system. The respiratory system of animals is composed of a series of tubes, sacs, and chambers that are specialized for the exchange of gases. The anatomy of the respiratory system varies greatly across species. For example, in aquatic animals like fish, respiration occurs through gills, which are specialized structures that are rich in blood vessels and are capable of extracting dissolved oxygen from water. In insects, respiration occurs through a system of tubes called trachea, which are connected to the external environment through small openings called spiracles. In mammals, respiration occurs through the lungs, which is composed of bronchi, bronchioles, and alveoli. The lungs provide a large surface area for the exchange of gases between the air and the blood. Then transport and exchange of gases. In order for gases to be exchanged between the external environment and the internal body tissues, they must first be transported to and from the respiratory surface. In animals that use gills or lungs, this transport occurs to the circulatory system. Oxygen diffuses from the respiratory surface into the blood, where it binds to hemoglobin and is transported to the body tissues. Carbon dioxide diffuses from the body tissues into the blood, where it is carried in the form of bicarbonate ions or bound to the hemoglobin and is transported back to the respiratory surface for elimination. Then waste elimination. In addition to the exchange of gases, the respiratory system also plays a role in elimination of waste products. In mammals, carbon dioxide is eliminated from the body through the exhalation. In aquatic animals, ammonia and other nitrogenous wastes are eliminated through the gills. Neural and chemical regulation of respiration. The respiratory system is under both neural and chemical regulation. Neural regulation occurs through the respiratory centers in the brainstem, which receives input from chemoreceptors that monitor the levels of oxygen, carbon dioxide, and pH in the blood. Chemical regulation occurs through the release of hormones like adrenaline, which can increase respiration in response to stress or exercise. In conclusion, the respiratory system is an essential component of animal physiology. Then sense organs. Vision is the ability to detect light and interpret it as an image. The eye is the organ of vision, and it is made up of several parts such as cornea, iris, lens, retina, and optic nerve. The cornea is the outermost layer of the eye which protects the eye and helps to focus light into the lens. The iris is the colored part of the eye which controls the size of the pupil to regulate the amount of light entering the eye. The lens is a transparent structure that helps to focus light onto the retina. The retina is the innermost layer of the eye, which contains photoreceptor cells called rods and cones. Rods are more sensitive to light and help us see in dim light, while cones are responsible for color vision and help us see in bright light. So hearing is the ability to detect sound and interpret it as speech, music, or other sounds. One ear is the organ of hearing, and it is made up of three parts: the outer ear, middle ear, and inner ear. The outer ear is the visible part of the ear which collects sound waves and directs them towards the middle ear. The middle ear is the small chamber that contains three tiny bones called ossicles. The ossicles transmit sound vibrations from the eardrum to the inner ear. The inner ear is the sensory organ of hearing which contains the cochlea, a snail-shaped structure filled with fluid and hair cells that convert sound vibrations into electrical signals that are sent to the brain. Then tactile response. Tactile response refers to the ability to detect touch, pressure, and vibration. The skin is the organ responsible for tactile response and is made up of several layers such as the epidermis, dermis, and subcutaneous layer. The epidermis is the outermost layer of the skin which provides a protective barrier and contains sensory receptors for touch, pressure, and temperature. The dermis is the middle layer of skin which contains blood vessels, hair follicles, and sweat glands. The subcutaneous layer is the deepest layer of the skin which contains fat and connective tissue. The sense organs are essential for animals as they help them to perceive and interact with their environment. Vision helps animals to navigate, find food, and avoid predators. Hearing helps animals to communicate, detect predators, and locate prey. Tactile response helps animals to sense their surroundings and interact with other animals. Next, excretory system. The excretory system is responsible for the removal of waste products from the body. The main organs of the excretory system are kidneys, ureter, bladder, and urethra. Comparative physiology of excretion. Different organisms have different methods of excretion. For example, fish excrete ammonia directly into the water, while mammals excrete urea and birds excrete uric acid. This difference in excretion is due to the different environments that organisms live in and the different metabolic rates of their bodies. Then the kidneys are responsible for filtering the blood and removing waste products. Kidneys are responsible for filtering the blood and removing waste products. They are composed of millions of tiny units called nephrons which filter the blood and reabsorb necessary substances back into the body. The waste products are then excreted as urine. Urine formation occurs in the nephrons of the kidneys. The process involves filtration, reabsorption, and secretion. Filtration occurs as blood is forced through the walls of the glomerulus, a network of tiny blood vessels in the nephron. The filtrate is then reabsorbed back into the body as it moves through the tubules of the nephron. Finally, the remaining waste products are secreted into the urine. The concentration of urine is regulated by the hormone ADH, which is produced in the hypothalamus and released from the pituitary gland. ADH acts on the collecting ducts of the nephron to increase water reabsorption and concentration of urine. Waste elimination. Waste produced are eliminated from the body through the ureterus, bladder, and urethra. The bladder stores urine until it is ready to be eliminated throughout the urethra. Then micturition. Micturition is the process of emptying the bladder that is controlled by the nervous system, and it involves the relaxation of the urethral sphincter and contraction of the bladder. Then regulation of water balance, blood volume, blood pressure, electrolyte balance, acid-base balance. The kidneys play an important role in regulating the water balance, blood volume, blood pressure, electrolyte balance, and acid-base balance of the body. For example, they can increase or decrease urine production to help maintain a proper balance of electrolytes in the body. They can also increase or decrease water reabsorption to help maintain a proper balance of fluids in the body. Then thermoregulation. Thermoregulation is the ability of an organism to maintain its internal body temperature within a narrow range despite fluctuations in the external environment. This process is important for the survival and functioning of many organisms, including animals. Next topic, comfort zone. The range of environmental temperatures within which an animal can function effectively is called the comfort zone. The comfort zone varies between different species and may depend on several factors, including body size, insulation, and metabolic rate. Next, body temperature. Body temperature is completed and regulated by a complex system of physical, chemical, and neural mechanisms. The hypothalamus in the brain acts as a body's thermostat, monitoring changes in temperature and initiating responses to maintain homeostasis. Then physical regulation. The body can regulate its temperature through physical mechanisms such as sweating, panting, or changing body position to adjust the amount of surface area exposed to the environment. These mechanisms can help cool down or warm up the body as needed. Then chemical regulation. Chemical regulation of body temperature involves the release of hormones such as adrenaline, which can increase heat production and metabolism in response to cold temperatures. The neural regulation. Neural regulation of body temperature involves the autonomic nervous system, which can activate responses such as shivering or vasodilation to regulate body temperature. Then acclimatization. Acclimatization is the process by which an organism can adjust to changes in temperature over time. For example, people who live in hot climates may become better adapted to the heat over time, allowing them to function more effectively in high temperatures. Thermoregulation is important for the survival and functioning of many organisms, including animals. Maintaining a stable internal temperature is crucial for many physiological processes, including enzyme activity, muscle function, and nerve signaling. Failure to regulate body temperature can lead to a range of health problems, including hyperthermia, hypothermia, and heat shock or heat stroke. Stress and adaptation. Stress and adaptation are two interrelated concepts in biology. Stress is defined as any factor that disrupts the homeostasis of normal functioning of an organism, while adaptation is the process by which organisms adjust to changes in their environment to maintain homeostasis and survive. There are two main types of stress, biotic and abiotic. Biotic stresses include things like predators, parasites, and pathogens, and abiotic stresses include things like temperature, drought, and pollution. Organisms have evolved a variety of mechanisms to deal with stress and adaptation to changing environments. Some examples of these mechanisms include physiological adaptations. These are changes in the body that help an organism cope with stress. For example, during drought conditions, some plants have evolved mechanisms to conserve water, such as closing stomata or growing deep roots to access water reserves. Then behavioral adaptations. These are changes in an organism's behavior that help it cope with stress. For example, some animals alter their activity patterns to avoid predators or migrate to different areas to find food and water. Then genetic adaptations. These are changes in organisms' genetic makeup that help it cope with stress. For example, some bacteria have evolved resistance to antibiotics through acquisition of genes that code for antibiotic resistance. Then developmental adaptations. These are changes that occur during an organism's development that help it cope with stress later in life. For example, in some insects can undergo diapause, a state of suspended development that allows them to survive harsh environmental conditions later. Developmental adaptations. These are changes that occur during an organism's development that help it cope with stresses later in life. Then digestive system. The digestive system is responsible for the breakdown of food into smaller components and the absorption of nutrients and energy by the body. It consists of several organs including the mouth, esophagus, stomach, small intestine, large intestine, liver, pancreas, and gallbladder. Digestion. The process of digestion begins in the mouth, where food is mechanically broken down by teeth and chemically digested by saliva containing enzymes like amylase that break down carbohydrates. The food then moves down the esophagus and into the stomach, where it is further broken down by stomach acid and digestive enzymes. In the small intestine, bile from the liver and enzymes from the pancreas break down fats, proteins, and carbohydrates into smaller components that can be absorbed by the body. Finally, the waste moves into the large intestine, where water is reabsorbed and feces are formed. Then absorption takes place mainly in the small intestine. Nutrients like glucose, amino acids, and fatty acids are absorbed into the bloodstream through the walls of the small intestine and transported to the liver for processing and distribution to other parts of the body. Next, energy balance. Energy balance refers to the balance between the energy consumed through food and the energy expended from the body. If energy intake is greater than energy expenditure, the excess energy is stored in the body as fat. If energy intake is less than energy expenditure, the body uses stored energy for energy. Basal metabolic rate is the rate at which body uses energy while it rests to maintain basic life functions like breathing and circulation. BMR is influenced by various factors like age, gender, body composition, and genetics. The digestive system is crucial for the proper functioning of the body. It provides the body with necessary nutrients and energy to carry out various metabolic processes. Next topic, endocrinology. Endocrinology is the study of endocrine glands and their hormones, which regulate many physiological processes in the body. Reproduction is a complex process that involves the coordination of different hormones and physiological systems. So, endocrine glands. These are glands that secrete hormones directly into the bloodstream. Some examples include the pituitary gland, thyroid gland, adrenal gland, and pancreas. Next, hormones. These are chemical messengers that travel through the bloodstream and act on target cells to produce a response. So, hormones are important in regulating many physiological processes including growth and development, metabolism, and reproduction. Mechanism of hormone action. Hormones act on target cells by binding to specific receptors on the cell surface or within the cell. This binding triggers a signal transduction pathway that ultimately leads to a physiological response. Then, hormones and diseases. Hormonal imbalances can lead to a variety of diseases as diabetes, thyroid disorders, and reproductive disorders. Next, gametogenesis. This is the process of forming gametes, which are sex cells, sperm in males and eggs in females. Gametogenesis occurs in the testes and ovaries. Ovulation is the release of egg from the ovary. Ovulation is triggered by a surge of luteinizing hormone from the pituitary gland. Fertilization, the fusion of sperm and egg to form a zygote. Fertilization occurs in the fallopian tubes. Next, implantation. This is the attachment of the zygote to the lining of the uterus. Implantation occurs about a week after fertilization. Then, next, neuroendocrine regulation. The hypothalamus and pituitary gland play key roles in regulating the reproductive system. The hypothalamus secretes gonadotropin-releasing hormone, which regulates the pituitary gland to secrete follicle-stimulating hormone and LH. These hormones regulate gametogenesis, ovulation, and the production of sex hormones or estrogen and testosterone. The endocrine system and reproduction are important for maintaining homeostasis in the body and for perpetuating the species. Next, inheritance biology. Mendelian principles, dominance, segregation, independent assortment. Mendelian principle refers to the basic principles of inheritance formulated by Gregor Mendel in 19th century. These principles are the foundation of modern genetics and describe the inheritance of traits from parents to offspring. There are three main Mendelian principles like dominance, segregation, and independent assortment. So, dominance. According to this principle, one of the two alleles of a gene in a diploid organism masks or suppresses the expression of the other allele, and the trait associated with the dominant allele is observed in the phenotype. The dominant allele is denoted by the uppercase letter, while the recessive allele is denoted by a lowercase letter. For example, in the case of flower color in pea plants, the allele for purple flowers is dominant over the allele for white flowers. So it is an individual has one capital P allele and one small p allele, it will have purple flowers. Next, segregation. This principle states that during the formation of gametes, sperm and egg cells, the two alleles of a gene segregate from each other so that each gamete carries only one allele. This ensures that each offspring inherits one allele from each parent. For example, in the case of flower color in pea plant, if an individual has one p allele and one small p allele, half of its gametes will carry the p allele and the other half will carry the small p allele. So, independent assortment. This principle states that during gamete formation, the segregation of one pair of alleles is independent of the segregation of other pair of alleles. In other words, the inheritance of one trait does not affect the inheritance of another trait. This principle applies to genes located on different chromosomes. For example, the inheritance of flower color in pea plant is independent of the inheritance of seed color, which is determined by a different gene on the different chromosome. These are three principles explain the patterns of inheritance observed in Mendelian genetics. They also provide basis for predicting the probability of a particular trait in the offspring of a cross between two individuals with known genotypes. Mendelian genetics is important in understanding the inheritance of genetic diseases as well as in selective breeding in agriculture and animal husbandry. Next, concept of gene, allele, multiple alleles, pseudoallele, complementation tests. The concept of gene is a fundamental principle in genetics that explains how traits are inherited from parents to offspring. A gene is a segment of DNA that encodes a specific protein or RNA molecule, which we will be learning tomorrow.